Great, thank you everyone. Getting near the end of the day. I lead both the Interface Working Group and the Committee on Technology. User interface, I see some new times in here. So I think we're juggling around a little bit about when these two groups are going to be meeting, and they'll be solidified soon. I want to highlight in just a few minutes three of the key things I think we're going to be working on over this next year. They were driven first by user interface needs and new features people have been asking for, but it's hard to do user interface by itself. A lot of these require backend changes as well, and that's where the Committee on Technology comes in. Some acknowledgements first. So one of these things I mentioned a bit earlier with the Mass CPR network, how we're using I2B2 as a front end for it. And one of the things we needed to do was to be able to show the results of multiple sites as one of the query results. And we wanted to later on add some additional things like maps or the visualizations. And it's somewhat limited in the I2B2 UI right now. The query results are somewhat hard-coded. Here's a table, here's some graphs, and it doesn't have a lot of flexibility. Nick Bennick, right over there, who developed much of the code for the user interface for I2B2, did a big refactoring of those query results and made them much more modular. And now for each type of query that result that comes back, different breakdowns, you can set not only one, but multiple kinds of modular visualizations that could be assigned to it. So here, just for example, we're able to stick in the shrine breakdown for a number of institutions. Here below it is a bar graph breakdown of distribution by age, but here now in I2B2 in the upper corner for each item, there's a little drop-down menu of all the different visualizations that are possible. So I can click on the age distribution. I can say, do I want to buy the bar chart? Do I want to see a pie chart? Do I want to see a table graph of it? Do I want to get a CSV download file for it? So you can create new visualizations, link them to some breakdown that you have, and display those at however you want. We usually think of breakdowns as demographic breakdowns like age, sex, race, but you can have different kinds of breakdowns from custom SQL queries. So in our Mass CPR network, there's interest in how many biospecimens there are. So we can create a SQL query that says how many different kinds of biospecimens of type are associated with a cohort, and then create a custom visualization around that. One of the things we're looking at is doing zip code breakdown and then displaying the results on a map. So a bar chart of zip codes is not very useful, but you can swap that out very easily now with a geographic map that's showing where the patients are that are matching your query, and that's very important for the Mass CPR use cases. The next thing that we're going to be looking at is enhancing the term info box. So on the left, you have ontology, the browser inside of I2B2, and below it, the term info. This is coming right from the I2B2 ontology XML. There's things like the concept path, the SQL codes for it. It's useful for the administrators, but not so useful for the investigators. So on the right-hand side, we have some mock-ups that we made and discussed in our user interface working group. So it'd be much more useful for investigators to see things like alerts if there's a data quality problem, or the active dates when that concept was used clinically, or a definition of the concept to help people know what that is about. You can do some data-driven items like showing the number of patients per year for a concept to know if this is something that's really being used at your institution or when it started or stopped. So we're designing this in the user interface working group, but then the Committee on Technology will be pulling together Michelle on ontology and others working on that, as well as on the back end to figure out what extensions do we need to the ontology cell and I2B2 to have the data that's going to be necessary to put this kind of information within the user interface in that term info box. One of the things that's important for the Mass CPR use case of this is how to handle derived concepts. So things like computed phenotypes. If I say I have a computed phenotype for diabetes, what does that mean? So an investigator can click on that. It'll show information about all the stuff I talked about before, the algorithms that come into this, the accuracy of those concepts. or the wastewater data that we're going to be pulling in from the Department of Public Health. So where did that wastewater numbers come from, and how would you use that? So information about the concepts, particularly derived concepts, are important to describe here. Then the third thing are modifiers. Again, I mentioned this is useful in the mass CPR use case. We're looking at biospecimens, and modifiers are important there. Traditionally in I2B2, in order to do a modifier query, you have to put each modifier in a separate box and link them together on same instance queries. So it's cumbersome to create modifiers in I2B2. Investigators don't understand how to do that. So a concept of an inline modifier, and Anna Palm is not here today, put some mock-ups here, where you can just right-click the medication like you do a laboratory test, and a dialog box will pop up with all the different modifier options. You select the ones you want right there, and then it will be able to execute it in the same way. And that's a much more natural way that people would use this. It's not just the UI part of it. There's some back-end changes to all these things that are needed. You don't need to be a UI expert to join these working groups. You're just interested in these features and have ideas of functionality related to this, particular some of the visualizations that we might put in, how we want to work with ontology. Join our working groups and make sure you provide our feedback so we can design this with as much different viewpoints and community input as possible. And any quick questions on that before we then switch over to the ontology working group? Thank you.